we all heard these rumors in the past that Echo apparently was so bad that they just considered it unreleasable, at least according to these rumors. And then there was also other rumors that they were talking about just scrapping it entirely or giving it the Batgirl treatment, which was basically with Batgirl, for quick rundown for people who don't know, it was Warner Brothers produced it and it was so bad that they decided just to scrap it for a tax write-off instead of releasing it, even though it was actually done. I mean, as in like they could have released it onto Max right away and gotten something from it, but they decided it wasn't worth it. It was better just to get the tax write-off on it, and that's that, which is pretty funny. It almost makes me want to see it even more, knowing that that's how bad it was. It's like, really, how bad can it be? I mean, looking at some of the stuff that's come out from them, it's like, really, they thought this one was that bad? Well, apparently so, and they almost did that with Echo. But the thing is, one of the stuntmen who works with Marvel, I think he was doubling as Daredevil for Charlie Cox and amongst other things on Marvel. But he was saying like, yeah, it was so bad that they were wanting to give it the Batgirl treatment, but they decided because of the strikes going on, Marvel had this huge list or huge block of time that they didn't have anything to release. So they figured like, well, we'll just dump this on there. And now we're getting the official release date from this. This was just announced that it's going to be coming out. Here it is. January 10th of next year. So really, I mean, much like in the movie theaters, January is kind of just a dumping ground for stuff that the studios just aren't really proud of. But what's even more interesting about this one is because usually Disney Plus, when they release Marvel shows, they release it weekly increments because like, yeah, you have a good show that you think people are going to like. You're wanting to kind of tease it a little bit and build up that momentum to it by releasing it weekly. But this one, they're just dumping it all at once. And I think the reason they're doing that, and a lot of people are pointing this out, they're trying to say like, oh, it's a new marketing strategy or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's their spin on it. I mean, really why they're doing this is because instead of having 2 months worth of bad publicity of people just bashing it every week, they just decide like, we're just going to release it all at once. We're going to get like a week or two of people bad mouthing it, and then it's going to go away. And that's really what it is. I mean, I'm kind of surprised they're not just taking the tax write-off on it because it was so bad, but I think they invested too much money into this movie to actually do that. I mean, if you look at recent Disney Plus shows like Secret Invasion, that cost $212 million. And we know this because of the tax filings for the UK where a lot of this was shot, that's how much they spent on the show, which is insane. I mean, other articles have pointed out like Oppenheimer cost less money to make than this show, but whatever. I mean, that's what they spent on it. And just for comparison's sake, Hawkeye, which I bring this up because Echo first premiered in Hawkeye, that cost $200 million for the studio to make. And going back to this article from Yahoo that was talking about it, these comments were made on a podcast about like how they had to reshoot it. So this is what was said. I heard the show was kind of plagued by issues throughout production, Snyder stated. I heard that it was a mess and that the show came in so bad that they basically had to reshoot the entire thing. I'm told that they originally shot 8 episodes and Kevin Feige thought it was unreleasable, so they talked about cutting it down to 4 episodes or 6 in post, but then they ended up shooting it, so my source did not actually know how many episodes they wound up with. But yeah, apparently it needed a top-down rejiggering and that Kevin was not happy with it. Now, it's not as overly stated, but I'm kind of wondering how things actually went when it talked about reshooting, because he says they basically had to reshoot the whole thing. Because when movie studios, especially shoot stuff, they always basically establish a company built around the production, at least for any major productions, like with Disney, with something like Secret Invasion, when they were shooting in the UK, they establish a company that handles shooting that in the UK, and that's where we get the tax filings and other things like that. So when this is all said and done, we'll get the if they shot most of it in the UK, which I'm assuming they will because Marvel likes to do that because they get that tax break over there. What they do is they establish that company, but I'm wondering when he says they had to reshoot it, it's like, well, what's that mean? Did they establish 2 companies? They get the first one and then that none doesn't work, so they reshoot it and do the second one. But because if that's the case, they wouldn't be able to reuse any of the footage from the previous one, or they would have to sell it to the other one. I mean, there's a lot of complexity to it. But when things are all said and done, we're going to get the final budget for this, or at least an estimation of the budget, and it probably would be around that $200 million mark, which is what we're seeing for other Marvel properties. But if that doesn't take into account if that only takes into account like the production budget of the second company that they established to make this, well, then what about the first one? I mean, that's going to be something that just kind of lost or whatever, and something we won't figure out about. I mean, I'm going to grant that they probably don't spend as much on that because they never finished it. But that could probably be reaching somewhere in the $150 million mark. So if you combine that with what's going to be ultimately reported, which is around 200, they're probably invested 200, 300, maybe $350 million into this one show that right now they're thinking, oh no, this is terrible. But I mean, one of the reasons I think this is going so badly for them, because if you actually look at some of the synopsis for this, Marvel Studios presents Echo, in which Maya Lopez struggles to reconnect with her Native American roots while balancing aspirations tied to a life of crime as successor to the brutal legacy of Wilson Fisk. So I think this is really the issue right here, is not only are they spending so much money to produce this, but I mean, the whole point of this was just a vessel to have a female or disabled female of color to replace the straight white male as the head of a crime syndicate, which is, it's intersectional to the core. I mean, that's basically the whole point of this, is they're just trying to push their messages by having a disabled woman of color surpass a white guy. But it's funny though. I mean, did they not find a trans person? I mean, I'm wondering how many, if it's almost like they're really trying to figure out all the disabilities for this. And I know the character is part of the comic, but the reason they made her prominent and actually like are trying to champion her and make her her own thing within the MCU is just because she fits the agenda that they're trying to push. And comics for her, they're not like a popular thing, and then they're trying to just almost shoehorn her in and force her to be a thing, and it just doesn't work. I mean, we're seeing that with other characters like Miss Marvel, for instance. I mean, that's why she's gotten so many different reboots. But it's funny that this is so transparent, and the thing is, the studio knows that this doesn't work. But we do have some good news on the horizon, because according to people working within the entertainment industry, after the writer strike was over, I mean, it's a fact that a lot of these writers are going to be out of the work because it costs more to pay writers. So studios are just going to hire less of them. And the people who usually get axed first are the ones who are less experienced. And fortunately, the less experienced ones are these activist ones trying to use these characters and use these properties to push their agenda. And by getting rid of them first, you're going to see a lot of this stuff go away. I mean, it's going to take some time before we actually see things kind of go back to how they used to be, especially with Marvel and Disney, because they're usually the last one to the party when it comes to change. But I think we're going to start seeing more merit-based hiring when it comes to these writers, and I've talked about that in previous videos. And then when it comes to something like this, eventually things will correct course, but it might be too late or it probably is going to be too late to actually save things like the MCU. But in the future, I could expect more better things coming out of these studios, but that's for another time. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you like this video, make sure you click that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.